in June, I was walking around saying to my friends, I don't know what's going on. It's just uncanny to think back on it now. I said, I don't know what's going on, but something's gonna happen. Like, it feels like there's drum beats. It feels like we're moving towards something. It's really, really strange. I don't know what's going on. And one of the strange things that happened was we had a trip to California scheduled to see my parents the week that Danny was killed. And in early June, she rescheduled that trip. And I said, what's the problem with the trip? And she says, well, I'm worried we'll get stuck in the airport and we won't be back on Friday. I have to pick up the kids from school. And I said, but we're coming back Thursday night. It's not winter. We're not going. Lantern in the winter, I'd understand. There's no way we're going to get stuck. We can rent a car. We have friends that could babysit. This is strange. Like, what? I said, fine, cancel the trip.
And that was going to be in early June?
The trip was going to be the week that Danny was killed.
Oh, okay. That was the trip?
11th to 19th was supposed to be the trip. So we had a trip planned, and she was real strange about the fact that we had to reschedule this trip. It just didn't make sense. And I even said, if you just don't want to go because you don't feel comfortable right now, just tell me, that's cool. She goes, no, I have to pick up the kids from school that day. I just have to. I don't want to do anything to stop that, you know. And she said, I'll miss the kids at that point. I said, okay. A couple of days later, I say, well, she said, but I want to spend that time with you. I was leaving for Tennessee on Friday. And she said, I want to spend that Monday through Thursday with you. I said, great. You want to go to St. Augustine? She loves the beach. She hates Tallahassee. This, again, is just very strange and suspicious to me. Wendi Edison tells me, what I want to do is a staycation. I want to stay home in Tallahassee. I said, you want to stay in Tallahassee the hottest week of the year? She goes, yeah, we'll go to Tom Brown Park, we'll do this. I said, you hate it here. I'm offering to take you away. Why wouldn't you? It's just really strange at the time. I remember saying to my friends, like, Wendi wants... People laughed. I said, Wendi says she wants to stay in Tallahassee. Like, she leaves town. Sure, you know, every chance she gets, she leaves town. Why would she want to stay? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. I finally managed to convince her to do a trip to St. Augustine, but we had to schedule it so that we were back basically by the time of the shooting. So that was just strange. It was peculiar at the time. And when we scheduled that trip to St. Augustine, I was sitting her, she has her calendar open. You have to schedule everything with her. That's just how she was. There was just, at the time, I can remember sitting in her office trying to schedule this, and there was this weirdness about that weekend. We're scheduling other things, no problem, but that weekend, she just was intent on. That day meant something to me before Danny was shot. Like, there's something weird about that week. I don't know what it is, but there's something weird about that week. If we keep going through June, other things I noticed in June that were really crazy.
Let me back up a second so I get this right.
Yeah.
July 11th through 19th, you're supposed to go to California.
Yeah.
Leave on the 11th, come back on the 19th.
I can look it up for you. It might be 12th to 19th, but it was the week that Danny was shot. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So when is she saying, I can't do it? What date? What date are we talking about when she's telling you I can't do it?
Early June. I can pull up the exact
Early
date.
June.
Early June, yeah.
So you're supposed to go to California with her, just you two.
We have plane tickets purchased. And she sat me down, I think it was June 5th or 7th. I will find out for you if you would like.
Yeah.
And she just said, I can't do that, and it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make any sense.
So she'd already said that date was that window of...
She said, this is the one week I have to go see your parents. And I
11th
said,
through the 19th.
But that was in May we booked them. Then we have the flight. I find out about Danielle's sack. And afterwards she says, you know, I feel comfortable with that. She just had an appointment with her therapist, and she said, my main concern is I want to be able to see the kids on that day, the day that Danny was shot. We had people volunteering to babysit if they needed to, if we were delayed. We weren't going to be delayed. And she insisted it was not because she didn't want to go with me. She wanted to spend that week with me. She just wanted to spend that week with me in Tallahassee. She did not want to leave Tallahassee that week.
Okay.
And I mean, there's 3 different times. There's that time, then there's the staycation thing where I'm like, what are you talking about? That's bizarre. And then there was which we scheduled the trip to St. Augustine. If I fast forward a little bit, we had the trip in St. Augustine planned until July 15th or 16th, and she canceled that the last second. So 3 different times she canceled plans with me in the 2 or 3 day period with Dan.
What you're leading to is this is highly suspicious that she needs to be here on the 18th of July.
Yeah, just anecdotally, subjectively, whatever it's worth, it was really weird. It was really strange. I know this woman, I know her really well. And there was something at the time with me saying to my friends, what's going on? It's just really, really strange. It's just really...
She'd never done anything like this before?
No, she had canceled and recanceled, and she did that all the time. Completely disorganized person. But it usually made sense. It usually had a reason. And usually the reason was something about court with Danny, or her parents wanted to come down to South Florida. Every other time but this, I understood. This time I was completely puzzled. It didn't make sense. And it was very, very strange.
Okay, so she cancels this trip to California. Did you go anyway?
I did
No,
not.
of course you didn't. You were okay.
Wish I had.
Yeah. And so what happens to these plane tickets?
Her ticket, I have no idea.
Oh, she bought her own?
Yeah, we bought separate plane tickets. As a matter of fact, I don't know that she did buy a plane ticket.
Oh.
But she told me she did.
Same airline? Same flight?
I can find out for you. I can send you my reservation. Because we had a discussion about getting our seats moved together, so I think she probably bought a ticket, actually. But I never saw the ticket.
It wasn't discussed any further?
I can't recall.
Okay, so that's the first thing. In early June, she says, Jeff, I got to be back on that Friday the 18th.
Exactly.
To pick up the kids. I guess that's going to be the first of her week with the kids, maybe?
Yeah, she gets the kids back after having, because they went to 7-day schedule in the summer.
Right.
And she's going, I'll miss the kids. I said, we'll be back. It's not, I said, you don't want to go, just tell me I don't want to go. No, I want to go. I just got to be back for the kids. There was a special...
Okay, why not adjust the flight or adjust the...
Well, she had the kids the previous week. This was her one free week. She's also booked all summer.
Well, the 18th is a Friday.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so, going backwards, the 11th should have been a Thursday, I'm thinking.
I could look it up, but it just wasn't. She was booked week by week throughout the summer.
She doesn't even have any school stuff, right? I mean, I don't know if you're off during that time.
No, I'm completely off. She has a lot of obligations to her parents. Her parents want her down in Miami every chance she gets. All through this county, there's parents.
Okay.
All right, so three different occasions. This, at the time, it's like, what's going on with the 18th of July, or the week of the 18th? What is this? I don't understand what this is.
Okay, so the first thing is the California trip, and it's next.
Yes.
Then you want to take her to St. Augustine.
She says, yeah, she wants to stay, and that's just bizarre.
But did you ever make plans to go to St. Augustine?
Yeah, so a week later, again, we sat in front of the calendar, and it was really strange. There was this hesitancy about that weekend. She says, I'll go to St. Augustine, but we have to be back early on Friday.
Early on Friday?
Early on Friday.
What does early on Friday mean?
We were going to wake up and come straight back from St. Augustine, so we would have got up at 7, been here by 9 or 10.
Okay.
She had to pick up the kids from school until 4. It didn't make sense.
Okay.
Let's clear this up a little. In May, Jeff and Wendi plan a trip and purchase plane tickets to go visit his family in California. Everything is fine until the first week of June, when suddenly Wendi cancels the trip. The reason she gives is that she has to be back to pick up the kids Friday the 18th, which Jeff points out makes no sense since they were not even planning to return on the 18th, but Thursday, the day before. He says the 19th, but he says that they were returning Thursday and later corrects this date in his testimony. So returning a full day ahead of when she's due to pick up the kids and still cancels the entire trip, citing that as the reason. And as Jeff pointed out, they had several backup plans if that happened.
I want to talk about the incident that occurred at the coffee shop on June 4th of 2014. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened at the coffee shop? Was that here in Tallahassee?
That was at Red Eye Coffee. I had met Wendi for a cup of coffee. I had an appointment in the same building later, so we just met up. And a couple of things happened on that day, but at the coffee shop, Wendi canceled a trip that we had planned for her to come meet my parents in California, which was scheduled for July 11th to 17th. And she said she canceled that trip because she was concerned we wouldn't get back on the in time to pick up the kids on the 18th, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. But we then discussed, rescheduling the trip. It wasn't anything I objected to strongly or anything like that, but it was weird.
The plan originally was for you to return to Tallahassee on the 17th?
Yes.
And then for her to take custody of her kids from Dan Markel on the 18th?
Yes.
Okay. And she canceled the trip because why?
Because our flight might get delayed in the middle of summer and we would get stranded and not be able to be there to pick up the kids. And she had to pick up the kids on the 18th.
Okay.
More like she has to be back to make sure the job gets done.
I want to ask you about a meeting with Wendi at a coffee shop that occurred on June 4th, 2014. Do you recall that?
I do.
What happened at the coffee shop?
We went to the Red Eye coffee shop to have coffee just to meet midday, and Miss Adelson canceled a trip that we had planned for July 11th to 17th to go see my parents, which was a big deal in the relationship, and she abruptly canceled it.
Did she offer an explanation as to why she needed to cancel the trip?
Not one that made sense. She said that she feared that we would not get back in time, and she emphasized, had to be back on the 18th to pick the kids up out of school, which would have been July 18th, 5 p.m., is my understanding. And I couldn't fathom why in the summer going through Atlanta you wouldn't be able to get back in time. It didn't make any sense to me.
So she was worried you could be delayed and she wouldn't be able to pick the kids up.
Right, and we had people who could babysit. It didn't make any sense at all, but that was what she said. That day was very important.
All right, and so that occurred on June 4th.
It did.
All right, and so that occurred on June 4th.
It did.
Did you see her later that night?
Yes, I went to her house and hung out with her and her children that night.
All right, and was there anything unusual about her behavior on the night of June 4th, 2014?
Definitely. She was a nervous wreck. And I actually traveled to the store to buy her, I believe, some Pepto-Bismol because she was such a nervous wreck. She was having stomach problems. So she wasn't food poisoned. She didn't have the flu. She wasn't sick. She was just so nervous that she was having stomach problems.
All right, did you see her later that evening?
I did. I went to the house to hang out with her and her children.
And is that her residence on Aqua Ridge?
Yes, ma'am.
And how was she that night? This is June 4th, right?
It is.
Okay.
She was a nervous wreck to the point where she was sick to her stomach. Asked me to get to her house as soon as possible. She was in that much distress. And she didn't have food poisoning or flu or anything obvious. She was just a nervous wreck. So I went to her house, immediately went to the store to get her Pepto-Bismol and a couple of things from the convenience store. I have the credit card receipt, is why I recall that so specifically.
And did you have any idea why she's acting? I assume this is unusual for her.
It was fairly unusual. The degree of severity was definitely unusual. But that whole week, June 4th to 9th, she was very nervous. So.
And she didn't tell you it was because killers were in Tallahassee to kill Dan Markel, did she?
No, I was stunned to later find out that there was hitmen in town at the time.
Okay. I want to ask you about June 4th, 2014. Do you recall an event that occurred that day that was unusual?
Yeah, I remember a couple of unusual occurrences on June 4th.
Could you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, I had met Miss Adelson at the Red Eye coffee shop in Midtown for a coffee about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We were going to talk about our relationship a little bit, and she canceled a trip we had planned to California to visit my parents, which was scheduled for July 11th to 17th.
All right. And was she acting strangely that night?
Yeah, that night she was a nervous wreck. to the point, I couldn't put my finger on why at the time, to the point where she lived kind of way up Centerville where there's no convenience stores or anything close, and I actually took about 35 minutes and drove to a convenience store to get her Pepto-Bismol because she was such a nervous wreck and had a real nervous stomach that evening.
Okay. And did she ever tell you what the problem was?
No, she's very non-specific about it.
All right.
The first trip Garcia and Rivera took was June 4th through the 5th.
Prosecutor asked you about June 4th, 2014. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you said that you guys were at the Red Eye Coffee Shop, right?
That's correct.
And around what time was that?
I had a hair appointment at 2 or 3, so it was at 1 or 2.
And so in the early afternoon,
Could have been as early as 12:30, sir. I mean,
12:30.
Yeah.
Okay. So around 12:30 on June 4th, 2014, correct?
That's correct.
You indicated that she was and by she I mean Wendi Adelson, that she was acting unusual.
That's
Would
correct.
that be a fair assessment?
Yes.
Did you ask her what was wrong?
I did ask her what was wrong. It was very non-specific. That happened with Wendi quite a bit with it, where she was upset and there was not an exact name put to why.
Was she upset often?
Yes.
Would she get these kind of physical reactions often, that her stomach would hurt or that she would ask you to get her medicine?
I got to know her better in the spring, so I saw more of it than I would have in the fall. That was the only time I can recall. That was not an average thing. I think it's why I remember it, because it was unusual.
And you said that you drove about 35 minutes to get her medicine?
Yeah, it could have been 25, 35 minutes, but where she lived was not convenient to run to the store, so it was a discussion like, do we want to do that? It's all the way down there, and she was so nervous. I thought, no, I'm going. So.
Did she go with you?
No, she did not. She had the kids that night, so she stayed with the children.
Did she make any kind of doctor's appointments shortly thereafter, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Let's get a little deeper into this. A few things that we have to keep in mind. Katie is aware of what Sigfredo is doing and is updating Charlie, who is then assumedly updating Wendi. So on June 2nd, Sigfredo rents a car for the first trip to Tallahassee. On June 2nd, Sigfredo rents a silver Nissan. It was a 3-day rental due back on June 5th. However, the following day, Sigfredo swaps the vehicle out for a blue Hyundai. The due date for return remained the same for June 5th. They end up leaving in the early morning hours of June 4th. Cell phone records show that they arrived in Tallahassee around 12:30 p.m. and stayed at the motel until 6:30. Could this be why Wendi was so anxious? The hitmen were already in town by the time Wendi met Jeff for coffee. Katie was in constant contact with Sigfredo the entire first trip.
When you all didn't do anything the first time, did anybody call when you're heading back to Miami, or what's the first indication is?
He was talking to her. I know he kept talking to her on the phone. The first ride, he talked to her a lot. I know he did. He kept talking to her. I kept telling yo, get off the phone, bro. Like, keep talking to her. There's nothing to talk about. When you get down there, you talk to her personal. No need to be on the phone. I told him that's how you're going to get caught. I told him just like that. I said, that's how we're going to get caught. You on this phone. You talk too much, especially when you're drunk. You speak too much. But he always kept talking. Every time she would call me, there she go again. Oh, God.
But did he call her when y'all were on the way back? You decided abort the mission. You're not going to do it. You're not going to kill the guy this time.
Yeah, the first night, yeah, he called. He like, oh, nothing happened. We'll probably come back, but nothing happened today. Like, fuck it, this shit is sour. It's not, you know, we couldn't even find the guy. We followed him. We kicked. Every time we go to his house, I couldn't tell if he was in his house or not because his car going to the garage. So we could never know if he was there or not.
Did you ever hear a conversation between him and her, or was anybody questioning why y'all didn't do it?
No. Ain't nobody questioning us. Ain't nobody gonna question me. Ain't nobody even. I think that they didn't even know I was going on the ride unless the only one that knew was Katie. She knew I was in that car.
How did she know that?
Because he told her.
Okay.
He told her, I'm going with Tato. They call me Tato. So I think I'm going with Tato. So I said, I asked him who knows. He goes, no, it's just Katie. I said, that lady knows I'm in the car. He's like, nobody knows, just Katie. But in my instance, I didn't trust him that day. I'm like, somebody else got to know. Because if you told Katie, Katie had to tell that lady.
The lady being Wendi. And I'm sure that especially if there really was a first attempt, well, non-attempt by the other hitmen, I'm sure that Katie kept in constant contact with Charlie, updating him along the way. And I'm sure in turn he was keeping Wendi and his parents in the loop. So that means by the time the hitmen made it to Tallahassee, Wendi likely knew that they had to be back to Miami the very next day. Jeff said that they met at coffee as early as 12:30, but more likely around 1 or 2 p.m. The following morning, their cell data showed that they were at the motel until 11:20, staying here at the Budget Inn on Tennessee Street. Records then show their phone communicates with a cell site near Monroe in Tennessee at 11:27. Which would coincide with their driving straight there, as current traffic conditions would take them about 6 minutes to get there from the Budget Inn. And here's a Google Street View of that intersection. "25 minutes later, their handset communicates with a cell tower near Timberlane Road and Market Street. And this is the site that would provide cell service to Premier Fitness. Here's the cell tower site from their last location at the corner of Monroe and Tennessee. And here's where Premier Fitness is located. Now, you might be wondering why there's a time discrepancy if it only takes 10 or so minutes to arrive there from their last known location. The way these locations are generated, the cell tower sites will only connect with the phone when there is activity on the phone. So this could be consistent with them sitting in the parking lot for 15 minutes and then calling Katie for an update. Now, records do show that Dan checked into Premier Fitness at 9:18, but they do not have a record of when he left. But based on his routine that we know about, it seems like he only spends an hour to an hour and a half at the gym. So that begs the question, how did the hitmen know that he frequents Premier Fitness? Their call records show that they were at Budget Inn from a little after midnight to 11:20 a.m. So, who could have possibly made them aware of this part of his schedule? Because as we know, the only information that they were given by Charlie initially was a piece of paper with his name, home address, and a picture of him.
How do you know what kind of car he's driving?
Because Sigfredo told me the car.
Sigfredo told you the car?
He said he got a black Nissan.
Okay.
No tints. You will see him. Because he already showed me the picture.
So Sigfredo supplied you a picture of Markel, which is the target,
Yes, sir.
and has also told you a type of car that he drives.
Yes, sir.
Does he tell you where that information came from?
No, sir. He just showed me a piece of paper with his name, and I believe that paper had that address. But I remember seeing his face, and so the paper had the address.
Was it typed or was it handwritten?
No, it's like that.
Typed?
Yeah.
The next signal picked up from the cell phone is at 12:33 to 12:40 at cell sites that services Danny's neighborhood. There is further communication at the same cell site at both 1:44 to 2:18 and at 3:25. This is the intersection where that cell tower is located, and also directly coincides with the park that Rivera said that they were doing surveillance from. It seems like they left to head back to Miami shortly after this, as our next location shows them in Greenville, Florida on I-10, 44 minutes later. So let's line this timeline up a little. Jeff and Wendi meet up June 4th at Red Eye Coffee between 1 and 2, but as early as 12:30. At this point in time, the hitmen were already in town, and Wendi would have very likely known that their rental car was due back in Miami the next day on June 5th. It's unclear whether or not she had planned the 2-week trip to Miami at this point, but seeing that it would have conflicted with this trip to California, I would assume not. At any rate, Wendi cancels the trip that she had planned with Jeff. But who will babysit the hitmen if I'm in California, Jeff? Ugh. By that evening, Wendi was begging Jeff to get to her house as soon as possible. Come quick, my tummy hurts. By the time he arrived, her nerves have her in such a state of distress that he leaves to go get her Pepto-Bismol. I'm sick over the fact that Dan's not dead yet. What? Huh? Okay, here's your stuff. By this time, Wendi would have allegedly, definitely known that the hitmen weren't going to complete the job on this trip and would have to come back. Is that why she was such a nervous wreck? The notion that this may not be getting done again, and why cancel the trip? It was either because she thought that the job wasn't getting done and wanted to be able to be there to check on them, or she thought it was about to be done and she would be in Miami by this weekend and Jeff would be ancient history by July. But this was one of 3 sets of plans that she canceled with Jeff. The California trip, scheduled in late April, early May, canceled June 4th. The St. Augustine trip, plans made mid-June, canceled 5 or so days before the murder. And the staycation trip, planned after the St. Augustine trip is canceled and she doesn't see Jeff all week. Were these last plans canceled because Jeff would have likely stayed over at Wendi's house the night before the murder, foiling her plans to either set him up or her ability to find Dan herself? He said he spent nearly every night at her house that she didn't have the kids.
Okay. She has 2 kids. I've been over there, I'd say 80 or 90% of nights I'm over there. And every single night that she doesn't have the kids, with maybe just 1 or 2 exceptions, if she's in town, I've slept over. So I spent a lot of time with her.
Now, I think collectively one of the biggest red flags for everyone was how Wendi never asked about the kids' well-being at the police station. She did tell Jane that when the cops picked her up, she asked how the kids were.
I was at lunch with Janine and Ritu, I don't know if you know them, friends of mine, and these officers walk in, and I ate a lunch, like I had a whole delicious lunch, and they're like, are you Wendi? We need to speak with you. And I was like, oh my God, are the boys okay? And they were like, the boys are fine.
Something that I immediately disregarded as bullshit, as the frequency of Wendi's lies would make me question anything that she said. If she told me that the sky was blue, I would go outside to double check. I don't trust this woman at all. However, in the review of the documents I got from the TPD, I did see where they verified this information. In a report written by Detective Isom, he described locating her at Mosaic Restaurant and does confirm that she did indeed inquire if something happened to one of her children. Fine, Wendi. 1 point for one truthful thing that you've said. Congratulations on that achievement. This does not explain why she never checked into the safety of her children, though, when she drove up to the crime scene.
Who had your kids the morning that Mr. Markel was killed?
The kids were at preschool.
But I mean, at what home did they wake up that day?
That morning, I think they were at Danny's house.
on the way to run your errands, did you encounter a roadblock on Trescott?
I did.
All right, so you did turn off of Centerville onto Trescott.
I did.
All right, and when you encountered a roadblock, what did you assume the problem was there?
I figured it was just an electrical storm or something. There was some tape, and it looked like the road was blocked off. And so I just turned around and went back and went up Benton.
And had there been an electrical storm that morning?
I didn't remember an electrical storm, but in the summertime, there's always trees falling and rainstorms, so pretty normal.
Right, and you weren't concerned based on that experience that there could be something going on at your marital home?
Absolutely not.
And your ex-husband, Dan Markel, had your children at that time, right?
No, he did not.
Okay, so you had your children at that time?
No, my children were at preschool at that time.
Right, but who took them to preschool that day?
Danny would have taken them to preschool.
Okay. So it was his day. He was killed on his parenting day.
It was the day he would have brought them to preschool, and I would have picked them up.
All right. Did they spend the night with him the night before?
They did.
Okay. And you hadn't seen your children yet that day when you encountered the roadblock?
On Friday, no.
Where were your kids supposed to be at the time that you encountered that roadblock?
They would have been at school.
And that's at the creative preschool?
That's right.
Who took them to preschool that day?
Danny.
And who was supposed to pick them up from preschool that day?
Me.
All right. So did you know for sure that they had made it to preschool that day at the time you encountered the roadblock?
I just assumed. I mean, if they hadn't made it to preschool, Danny would have let me know, but...
Did you attempt to call Dan Markel when you encountered the roadblock?
No, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it was related to the house.
Had you talked to Dan Markel or your kids that morning?
My kids know, but that would have been normal. And Danny and I tried to get in touch with each other, but we left. We were trying to figure out where Ben was going to go to kindergarten at the time, and we left voicemails for each other, but didn't get to talk.
So let's ignore Wendi trying to downplay the scene that she drove up to. Because this is the scene that she pulled up to. Please pay attention to the 2122 mailbox right here, as this next mailbox in the bricks is inside of the crime scene tape. And the tape is attached to this utility pole right here. And I can't be 100%, but this looks an awful like Detective Isom to me. Here's another view of the mailbox that we were just looking at that is outside of the crime scene tape. And again, there is tape just in front of this brick mailbox. And in plain view is a marked police car and what I can assume is a detective's vehicle, as well as a number of police officers and other people inside of the crime scene. And I've gone to Google Street View, and here we see that same white mailbox marked 2122. The way we are traveling down the road would have been coming from Centerville, just as Wendi was. As we approach, you can see that brick mailbox. And here is the utility pole that the crime scene tape was tied off to. And we can see it here a little better, albeit a little warped from the Google Street View cameras. And in case you're failing to understand the significance of this is Dan's house, a house which Wendi also lived in for more than 6 years. If we look at this next picture, here's another police car, and this appears to be one of the TPD's forensic vans, which looks like this. Returning to this picture, the police car is in front of an easily identifiable circular driveway. So returning to Street View, we can go up the street just a touch, and we see that nearly right across the street from Dan's driveway is that circular driveway. Here is Dan's house. So this picture was taken from the vantage point of Dan's driveway. Here's a picture of Dan's house, also with the crime scene tape across the driveway. And here's the car that Wendi was so horrified to see on the news report.
You Google Trescott shooting, and what do you see?
Just that, police investigate shooting on Trescott Drive.
And it's on the news.
And unfortunately, the media here tends to get places, and they can't really stop them from being outside.
How often is there shooting in like northeast Tallahassee, right?
On Trescott Drive?
Not so often. This is what I can't figure out. How did he get to the hospital? Like, did he call 911?
No, a neighbor, according to WCTV, here.
And this should be said, the police department won't release his name until they notify
the family.
And them being in Canada puts a little bit more of a wrench into our notification because it's a little bit more difficult to do internationally. But
oh my God.
we're in the process.
And there's really, his injuries are really terrible.
The police got notified because a neighbor. Is it a picture of the house? Oh my God! You can see the car. You can't tell it's our house.
Well, yeah, right. You can't tell it's not your house. It certainly appears to be a house like your house.
Yeah. Is it a picture of the house? Oh my God! You can see the car.
And just for the record, the news crews were there just before Wendi was. This article from the Tallahassee Democrat was published at 12:55, the day of the murder. And this is the first published picture. And as we can see here by the mailbox marked as 2113 and the 2115 one here, and the tree that overhangs the road right here, we can still see the utility pole that the crime scene tape is attached to here. But do you know what we don't see in any of these pictures? So her whole line about not having any reason to worry is utter nonsense. It is not even a little bit believable that she pulled up to the crime scene tape that has clearly marked off Dan's house only and not immediately know that it was a crime scene.
It's certainly a crime scene, obviously a crime scene.
See, even Jane knows, Wendi. You can try to downplay this as much as you want. But driving up to what is clearly and obviously a crime scene in which your ex's house is the only one isolated, and not at the very least calling the preschool to make sure your boys are there, points very heavily to you knowing that the boys were already in school because you were getting updates directly from the hitmen who were tailing your ex. Because there is no other mother on earth, well, except for one, that would see this scene and not fear for her kids' safety.
I was trying to do all I can before meeting my two friends at 1.
Okay, who was at your house this morning?
The only person that was at my house this morning was a guy from Best Buy because my TV was broken and it's under warranty.
Easy for you.
Yeah, I figured.
Okay, a guy from Best Buy was at your house to work on your TV?
I have his name and everything at the house if you want it, because the boys broke the TV. So he gave me a choice of fixing it or getting a new one.
What time did he come to the house?
He called me at around 8. He was probably there until around 10.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. And then you
and then after he left, I kept working on a paper, and I emailed the paper to a librarian at school to work on some of the citations.
Okay.
And I don't think I talked to anyone else, but I was just working for an hour or so from the house. I was gonna take a shower, but I didn't. I ran out of time. I did laundry, and then I left the house around noon.
To go to the liquor store and the stuff for the party.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay. Hi.
She's got to do.
You
She's
come
got to
with
swab
me?
your hands.
Oh,
First, I'm gonna have to do your hands.
okay. Hi. What does GSR stand for?
Gunshot residue.
Residue?
Residue.
Okay. This is a really hard job you guys have.
Can't be. All right, right hand. Okay, and are you right or left-handed?
I work with both.
Okay.
But right-handed.
Okay, left hand. Since noon today, have you washed your hands at all?
I wish I could tell you I had, but I haven't.
Okay.
I'm filthy.
He's into polyamory and having multiple partners. He's bisexual. I mean, so she started doing all this crazy stuff. Zach was encouraging her, from what she said, to have sex with lots of people, not just him.
And a picture, correct?
Yeah.
Take a picture. I'm just gonna take a picture.
Of my hands?
No,
No,
of you.
you.
Just
You
stand up, and then you can go to the bathroom.
Okay. I really wish I had taken a shower this morning. My plan was to go to this lunch and then come home and work out and shower and then be ready for this party tonight with the boys. Plans are funny. All kinds of plans that will not be happening. But they swabbed my hands.
Well, fair enough.
Gunpowder.
They should.
They asked me if I washed my hands since noon, and I was embarrassed to say I hadn't. I don't remember when I last washed my hands.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, indeed, Jane. So Wendi makes a point of not only telling Isom what she did that morning, like he had asked, but also the one thing that she didn't do, shower. And then claims that she couldn't because she ran out of time.
I was going to take a shower, but I didn't. I ran out of time.
We figured out earlier in this series that the repairman left before 10 a.m. And then Wendi didn't leave her house until 12:30 p.m. So let's assess why, in over a 2.5-hour time period, little Wendi Poo didn't have time to shower. So I have a few different theories on this. First, there's no accounting for Wendi when she's in the shower, and she needed to create a digital footprint for her alibi. If Wendi takes an hour and a half to get her shower and do her hair and makeup from 10 a.m. to 11:30, that leaves her completely unaccounted for right at the time that Danny is shot. So that's out. And by the time she called Danny at 11:42, her excitement was probably too high to do much else other than to talk to a few friends, hit the save button several times on the paper she was working on. So it's not that time management was the issue. It's that being liable for that time became the paramount issue. Second, and I think that this was fully decided beforehand, Wendi knew that Danny was going to be shot. Allegedly. And being the only one up there, knew that she had to prove that she wasn't the one who did it, which meant intentionally and clearly keeping herself filthy to show that she didn't wash any evidence off of her. She also mentions the same thing about her van for the same reason.
I'm sorry my face is so red. I told her I was laughing because my rear end's sticking up, bending over, getting the seats. I was like, oh, I'm sure 7th Avenue is loving
Did you
this.
see all the Cheerios that are in that car?
We did. At least
I know
can be
it's
all
there.
vacuumed out.
I meant to
No,
clean the car
please.
this week. Now I'm glad I didn't because it would look like I was trying to erase a crime scene.
Well, and the funny
This is why she made sure to directly tell Isom that she had not showered before leaving her house. So he would know that any evidence would still be on her, and then when they found none, she figured that she would be cleared. And as we know, her big brother Charlie seemed to believe that that's all you had to do not to get caught, was to not be directly linked to the crime with some sort of physical evidence.
Well, because one of two things. You don't have information. Okay, I'm going to tell him that my brother did. I'll do it right now, no. You're going to say, you prove it. And I'm going to say, no. You know what kind of gun was used? I'm going to say no. Did you see your brother do it? No. How do you know he used it? He told you. Okay, he told you. That's all you. Second-hand knowledge. It's not even admissible. I mean, he told me. What did he tell you? He said I did. Even if I went in and said, our brother said he did it, you gotta prove it. You gotta put the person at the scene. You understand? In order to prove it, you have to put that person at the scene at the time.
I am going to be giving you your instructions on the law itself. A copy of the jury instructions that I will be reading to you has been placed in your chairs. If you wish to follow along as I read to you, that is certainly your choice. If you just wish to listen as I read it out loud, you may do so as well. After these instructions have been given, the attorneys are going to give you their closing arguments. Let's get started at Header 3.1, Introduction to Final Instructions. Members of the jury, I thank you for your attention during this trial. Please pay attention to the instructions I am about to give you. Charles Adelson, the defendant in this case, has been accused of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Charles Adelson is accused of first-degree murder in count 1 of the indictment. I will now instruct you on the circumstances that must be proved before Charles Adelson may be found guilty of first-degree murder. To prove the crime of first-degree premeditated murder, the state must prove the following 3 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Element 1, Daniel Markel is dead. Element 2, the death was caused by the criminal act of Charles Adelson. Element 3, there was a premeditated killing of Daniel Markel. An act includes a series of related actions arising from and performed pursuant to a single design or purpose. Killing with premeditation is killing after consciously deciding to do so. The decision must be present in the mind at the time of the killing. The law does not fix the exact period of time that must pass between the formation of the premeditated intent to kill and the killing. The period of time must be long enough to allow reflection by the defendant. The premeditated intent to kill must be formed before the killing. The question of premeditation is a question of fact to be determined by you from the evidence. It will be sufficient proof of premeditation if the circumstances of the killing and the conduct of the accused convince you beyond a reasonable doubt of the existence of premeditation at the time of the killing. If the defendant helped another person or persons commit a crime, the defendant is a principal and must be treated as if he had done all the things the other person or persons did if the defendant had a conscious intent that the criminal act be done, and the defendant did some act or said some word which was intended to, and which did incite, cause, encourage, assist, or advise the other person or persons to actually commit the crime. To be a principal, the defendant does not have to be present when the crime is committed. If the defendant paid or promised to pay another person or persons to commit a crime, the defendant is a principal and must be treated as if he had done all of the things the person who was promised or received the money did if the defendant had a conscious intent that the criminal act be done, and he made or promised the payment in exchange for the commission or promised to commit the crime or to help commit the crime, and the crime was committed by Sigfredo Garcia and or Luis Rivera. To be a principal, the defendant does not have to be present when the crime is committed.
You gotta prove it. You gotta put the person at the scene. You understand? In order to prove it, you have to put that person at the scene at the time, not in the car. Because the fact is, it's like, even if, let's say, you just sat in my car, right? And then I go ahead and I commit a crime, and then I go, and your DNA's in the car, and I go, yeah, Katie was in my car, he got out, and he did this horrible crime. Okay, then they come and they get the DNA in the car, and they go, yeah, Katie was in the car. Katie sat in the car for 2 minutes, got out of the AC, and then got out of the car. Katie has nothing to do with the murder case that doesn't exist. So, even if I can prove that, yeah, Katie was guilty, can you put Katie at the murder scene? I can put Katie, not say the shooting out of the car, yeah. What you do is, you have a little bit of that, you have to get in the car, and then when you bring the interrogation, or at least if you know, you are going to have money on, you know, such a day, you were in that car. So even if DNA, your fingerprints, fucking hair, is all over that fucking car, that proves, yeah, congratulations, you were in the car. It's not a sign to sit in a car. Okay, you know what I mean? My mom just sat in the car. It's not a...
The verdict form is in its proper order. Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, the State of Florida versus Charles Eggleston, case number 2016 CF 3036B, verdict. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Aw, sorry, Charlie. A quick little Google search for what constitutes first-degree murder in Florida would have been a handy step to take before, deciding to kill Dan. But when you know it all, what more do you really have to learn? I know exactly how it went down, too. All right, Wendy, it's no big deal. We can't get caught for this because we're not going to be at the scene. Ever. You're going to be the only one who's in town, so you'll be the one they look closest at. So all you have to do is make sure that you have a digital record for everything you do that afternoon. And then, when the officer comes to your house to tell you that your ex has been killed, you cry like a 3-year-old who dropped their ice cream cone and hyperventilate a little. Nah, tears don't matter. Just cover your eyes. They won't know the difference. They can suspect you all they want. If no one saw you shoot him and you weren't covered in blood and gunpowder, you're scot-free. Wendy, this is why we hired known criminals to do this. Have we been caught for any of our other crimes? Tax evasion? No. Insider stock trading? No. Hell, Wendy, I sell steroids and no one would ever suspect me. You think the cops want to lock up lawyers and surgeons? No, only the scary guys go to jail. We pay their salaries, and if they say anything, we'll just pay them off. Come on, Wendy, I'm the maestro. I'm right about everything. I own a Ferrari. I sleep with 19-year-olds. I'm untouchable.
Someone comes up to me, they're going to be ready to shoot. I'm going to shoot. Someone comes up to me, asks for money in my house. Yeah, and when guess what? When the fucking police show up, and there's a doctor, there's an oral surgeon standing there with a dedicated member in the fucking driveway, they're not gonna come down too hard on me. I'm not gonna talk anyway. I don't know much. I don't trust them.
The way that these people think life works is insane. But I guess it's like anything else. When you get your way enough times, regardless of whether or not you've earned it or you deserve it, you just expect everything to be like that.
Can you, let me get over this hump, okay? Can we do that first? All right. Can you tell me what time you left your house this morning?
Yeah, I was there. I didn't leave this morning. I didn't leave until noon.
Okay.
Oh my God. And I tried to drive up Trescott and I saw that it was blocked.
It was blocked at some point. I'm not sure what time it was
And I
blocked.
just thought, oh, there's maybe some trees down or something. Cause sometimes
Oh, you're saying as you drove down which one of the side roads?
when I'm going to a friend's party tonight and it's a oh my God, what am I even talking about? I needed to buy, it's a stock the shelf engagement party, and so I went to buy bourbon.
Okay.
So I went to drive from my place up Trescott to get to ABC Liquor, and it was blocked, so I just turned around. I was on the phone at the time. I wasn't paying a lot of attention.
Right.
So I just turned around and drove up the other way. I just thought, oh, sometimes when I lived there were electrical things that would happen. I left my house around 12:15 because I thought I'll get the bourbon and then I'll get some gas for the car and get super glue for one of the boys' toys. And I was trying to do all I can before meeting my two friends at 1.
Mm.
And then I left the house around noon.
To go to the liquor store and the stuff for the party?
Yeah.
Okay, you went down which road you said?
I went down Trescott.
Okay.
I saw a police car there, and I just thought it was blocked, so I just turned around and drove to, I went down the rest of Centerville, went up Benton across, went to ABC Liquors, bought the bourbon.
I'm a little confused. You're up on Centerville Road. What's your purpose of driving down Trescott?
It's usually the shortcut to get to
Oh.
Monroe.
To get to Monroe?
I usually take it as a cut through to get to Thomasville or Monroe.
Okay, all right, so it's shorter than going all the way down to Benton.
All the way down Centerville and around Benton. It's just
Right.
a shortcut I always took.
Okay, so you turned around and went back to Centerville, I take it?
Yeah.
Down to Benton and went to the liquor store down there on Thomasville?
Yeah.
The one at Benton Road?
ABC Liquors, it's at, Benton. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, did you make a purchase there?
Yeah,
And that was sometime after 12?
probably 12:30.
Okay, all right.
And I talked to a guy there because I don't really buy much alcohol, and so they wanted bourbon, and I asked the guy, we had a whole conversation about bourbon and my eyes, like,
Your eyes?
he just said, your eyes are really blue,
Right.
and
You have contacts?
I do.
Okay.
But I just remembered it.
Right.
Wendi, you're a murderer. No one cares how blue your contacts are.
Didn't want you to think I was crumbling up other receipts. They're
No, it wasn't for that. I just was thinking before.
No, I just thought I would find the bourbon one.
Yeah.
But I must have put it in the bag.
Just looking at the dates.
I eat a lot. I lost the key to my house, so I went to buy many spare keys to give to friends around town so I don't get locked out of my house again.
Okay.
So that's
All
what
right.
that is. It's my many spare keys that are now around Tallahassee, which now makes me nervous.
Okay. I know the receipt that I might be interested in is the gas receipt.
Yeah. Oh, I asked for no receipt,
Okay.
so I can give you my
That's okay.
charge card information, but
If I need it later on.
I didn't get a receipt.
That's all right.
Okay.
But you bought the bourbon over there sometime afternoon and then went to, okay. All right.
It should be, the bourbon's in the car, so
Okay.
it should be in there.
Okay.
And I was supposed to go to a friend's engagement party tonight, and it's called a Stack the Bar engagement, so I went to go find bourbon. So I went to drive to ABC Liquors, and I went to go through Trescott, and it was blocked off. So I went around, and then I looked for bourbon, and then I got gas. That's why I was trying to show the officer, like, I have receipts from all these things, but I don't know if it matters if they're at noon. I mean, obviously, like,
I would be one of the people that they would think did it. I want to send some text sort of canceling my plans. Like, actually it's 6:30. I was supposed to be at a party by now, so let me tell Linda. God, the person throwing it works at Beavis Funeral Home.
Okay.
My friend Elizabeth is a mortician. She's the prettiest mortician I've ever met. What did we say I should tell people?
Just say,
can't make it tonight.
Yeah, just like, I'm very sorry, I can't make it tonight. I'll be in contact soon. And so they're doing a Stock the Bar party.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that. Is that a thing?
I think it's newer for newer people getting married and don't have as much money to spend on weddings, so you do a Stock the Bar party, so at least you get all your liquor and... Or maybe just stock a bar at your house. I don't know. But that was my interpretation when I've heard of the Stock the Bar
I'll
parties.
be drinking that bourbon for dinner.
Do you like bourbon?
No.
I don't know much about bourbon.
I don't know anything about bourbon. I asked her Okay, so that was tonight's plan.
So she starts by saying, should I? Then switches to past tense, saying, asked her, and then never finishes her sentence. But based on what they were discussing a second beforehand, we can assume that she was going to say that she's going to ask her what kind of bourbon. Which she tries to blame this purchase on the prettiest mortician she's ever seen. But we will discuss this more in a little bit.
On the way to the liquor store.
Joe Davis was the one at 1227.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I actually spoke with Joe. Laura, I left a message, and then Jeff I spoke with for a while, and then the connection cut out. I went into the liquor store, I tried him back again. We talked for a few minutes, connection cut out again, and I was like, I'm at lunch, I'll just call him back later.
Okay. When you went to the liquor store, did you already know what you're going to get, or you had to...
Yeah, I had the name of, I don't know bourbon, but I was supposed to go to this party tonight. It's like a Stock the Bar party, and so I asked my friend what do they like, and she wrote down the name of the type of bourbon. So I went in the store to get Bulleit bourbon, and so I asked the guy in the store, like, where's your bourbon? And so he showed it to me, and I found it. And
okay, so you just went, he pointed out where the bourbon was?
Yeah.
And you go there and you just grab the brand that's familiar by the name?
Yeah, that's what they said they wanted. So.
Okay, so you didn't discuss with the clerk whether it's good, whether it's bad?
The only thing I said I discussed is I walked over and he was like, can I see your ID? And I was like, why are you laughing? I could be 18.
Okay.
And so I was like, I love to be asked how old I am. I'm like, I'm old as dirt. Here you go. And so I handed it to him and he's like, you're not old.
Okay.
So anyway, we had like a little banter and he was like, your eyes are so blue. And I was like, thank you. And then I left.
The way she avoids saying bullet is comically insane.
The store to get Bulleit bourbon.
Going back to Exhibit 20. Can I put Exhibit 20 on the screen? Sure. Show me what button. This is a picture that you took?
Yes.
And it's a picture of Bullet whiskey? Is that right?
Bullet rye whiskey, yes.
Is there a reason why you took this picture?
I was requested to take a photo of it.
Who requested you to take it?
Investigators that were there with me. And I would have also photographed everything in the vehicle.
Because that's literally her job.
This came out of Wendi Adelson's car?
Yes.
Are you aware that Wendi Adelson was invited to a party where she was asked to bring Bullet whiskey?
No, I was not.
You didn't try to do investigation into that?
I do crime scene. I'm not an investigator.
And that, Daddy Rashi Dum Dum, is not her job. The way she glances and smiles at the jury, like, I bet you all were paying attention when I introduced myself.
I do crime scene. I'm not an investigator.
Here's Dan just rifling through some pictures as Joanne comes into the courtroom. George is returning the pile of crap that he left on their table from the prior witness.
Good morning. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
You may take your seat.
Ma'am, please introduce yourself and spell your name.
Joanne Maltese, Joanne, and Maltese, Maltese.
How are you employed, ma'am?
Retired Tallahassee Police Forensics Specialist. I now have some businesses in Thomasville, Georgia.
How long were you with TPD?
It's TPD for 26 years.
And were you with them back in 2014?
Yes, I was.
What were your duties back in 2014?
2014, I was a forensic specialist, and my primary duties were the documentation, collection, and preservation of evidence at a crime scene.
And what training and education did you receive to do that type of duty?
At the time, I had over 1,500 hours of specific crime scene training to include photography, collection, DNA, fingerprints, as well as I taught at Pat Thomas Law Enforcement Academy in crime scene, as well as teaching at the police department.
Did you respond to 2116 Trescott Drive on July 18th, 2014?
Yes, I did.
And is that the scene that's shown in the photograph, states 10, that's up on the screen right now?
Yes, it is, inside the garage.
If you don't understand this reference, we can't be friends. While we're waiting for Dan to get his shit together, I did a little experiment the other day to see how much dead time he actually has in court when speaking to witnesses. And on average, out of a 3-minute time period, he is silent for 2.
I want to talk a little bit more about July 18th. Do you recall leaving your house that day on Aqua Ridge Ray around 12:30 in the afternoon?
I do.
And you were going to meet a friend for lunch at a place called Mosaic.
Yes.
But you had to pick up a body.
She had to pick up what?
But you had to pick up a body. But you had to pick up a body. But you had to pick up a body.
Jesus, Dan. That's one hell of a Freudian slip to say to Wendi in the murder trial of her ex-husband while she's up there desperate to prove her innocence. You're one silly little critter.
I had to pick up a bottle of, I don't know if it's bourbon or whiskey. I don't even know if they're the same things, but Bullet whiskey.
It was bourbon.
Okay. It was for your friend's wedding shower that night?
They were having us stock the bar party, so they asked for specific kinds of alcohol to stock the bar.
And I'm showing you what's marked as Defense Exhibit 32. Is this the invitation that you received?
Yes, that's it.
Judge, I would move Defense Exhibit 32 into evidence at this point in time.
Any objection?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Exception.
State of mind.
You can provide me with the exhibit. The objection is sustained. She may testify as to remember.
Do you recall on the left-hand corner of the invitation, it says, help the bride and groom stock the bar for their wedding and bring a bottle of Bullet bourbon? Do you recall that?
Yes.
You can put that aside. Now, you decided to go to ABC Liquors on Bedden Road to look for the bourbon, right?
I did.
You're not a big drinker, is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Pathological liar. Wendy was an alcoholic while I was with her. She drank her dinner most nights. She was spinning out of control. And she wasn't that controlled to begin with, but it was getting worse. Her drinking was really increasing in April. And she had times where she's just losing her mind. I mean, with the kids in the house, drinking a bottle and a half of wine by herself, falling down in the bathroom, bruises.
You're not a big drinker, is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
You went to that store because you were familiar with it?
I'd seen it close to my house, so.
Close to your old house?
Close to my old house.
There could have been liquor stores that were closer to your current house?
Sure.
Leave it to Dan to point out how absurd it was of Wendy to go to this liquor store specifically, and also how far away it was from her house. And then bring direct attention to the fact that there were many liquor stores way closer to where she was living at the time.
Now, when you drove to ABC Liquor, you tried to go through Trescott. Is that fair to say?
It was blocked.
There are other ways to go to ABC Liquor, right? You could have gone down other roads.
I don't have the best sense of direction, so when I find a route, I just kind of keep using that route. I don't look for something else.
Okay. And you agreed to let the police search your phone?
Yes.
You agreed to let the police search your car?
Yes.
That's where they found that picture that I wasn't able to admit of the invitation of the bullet bourbon, right?
Yeah.
Dan later gets all upset and tells the jury that the piece of evidence about the bullet bourbon was only brought in to stir up the court.
You know, like the landline, I want you to think about the bullet bourbon. Agent Maltese was told to take a picture of that bullet bourbon. Done to incite. Thank God Wendi Adelson kept the invitation to the party. Not the simplest explanation, but the truth.
Dan, Joanne Maltese is a forensic examiner. Her literal job is to document any and all evidence. And seeing that Wendy is a suspect and her van was being searched, anything inside the van would have been documented for future examination. But yeah, no, it's a huge conspiracy by the state. And you say, thank God she had the invitation. What she had was a picture of the invitation with a handwritten note on it to specifically buy bullet bourbon, which is why it wasn't allowed into evidence. There's no way to even prove who wrote bullet bourbon on the invitation. But I'd put my money on Wendy. She even says it in the police station.
When you went to the liquor store, did you already know what you're going to get, or you had to?
Yeah, I had the name of, I don't know bourbon, but I was supposed to go to this party tonight. It's like a stock the bar party, and so I asked my friend what do they like, and she wrote down the name of the type of bourbon. So I went and.
So this isn't completely clear, but let's try to make this make sense. Wendy says that because of her lack of bourbon knowledge, she asked her friend, and her friend wrote down the name of the type of bourbon. Now, from the way Dan Rashbaum makes it seem, this was written on the invitation itself, meaning this entire argument that the invitation came like that, asking for bullet bourbon, is completely false and misleading. And also, this means that Wendy had to not only be speaking with said friend in person, but also had to have the physical copy of the invitation with her. And when exactly was she inquiring this of her friend? Because from the way she makes it sound to Detective Isom, this was just prior to her going to pick it up. And let me tell you the amount of effort that I put into trying to see this invitation. I'm screenshotting it. I'm zooming in. I'm flipping the image over. I'm trying to clean up the image. I'm going frame by frame when the judge is handing it back to Dan to try to get a clear picture. And then I Google search stock the bar invitations for the year 2014 only, trying to find a match with no luck. But out of the hundreds of invitations that I've gone through, the one thing that I have not seen is a specific brand name of alcohol being requested. Now, I do think it's plausible that different types of alcohol may be suggested. I think it's reasonable to assume that Wendi was asked maybe to get bourbon specifically, which she herself admits to. But never in a million years will I think that Bullet brand bourbon was the implicit instruction.
When you left the residence and encountered the roadblock, where were you headed?
When I left my residence,
Mm-hmm.
I was headed to ABC Liquors to get an item that was requested for a stock the bar party. I was supposed to go to that Friday night.
Well, what was that item?
I'm sorry?
What was the item?
It was bourbon.
What type of bourbon?
Bullet bourbon. The
And did
invitation
you-
had asked specifically to bring a bottle of Bullet bourbon, so I went to the store and asked them where I could find that.
And the bottle of Bullet bourbon was in your vehicle when law enforcement came to interview you about this case.
Right, when I told law enforcement they could search my vehicle and signed away all my rights, yeah.
If you've watched any of Wendi's testimony, you'll know that when she starts a lying, the hands go a flying.
The invitation had asked specifically to bring a bottle of Bullet bourbon, so I went to the store and asked them where I could find that. And
My God, I hate this woman.
Did you go directly to lunch?
no, I stopped and made a purchase for a party that I was supposed to attend first.
And what was that purchase?
It was my first time purchasing bourbon. It was for not a bridal shower. It was for a bachelor. No, it was for a wedding party, but it was the bride and groom together, and they had asked for people to buy certain alcohol to help them.
Like a stock the bar party.
A stock the bar party. I forgot what it's called.
Okay. And do you remember what type of bourbon you purchased?
I don't.
Does Bullet bourbon sound familiar?
Maybe. It was.
All right.
They had a list of what they wanted, and so I asked the person at the store if they had whatever kind it was.
Okay, so now there's a list you got to choose from. Interesting.
Okay. And do you recall where you went to purchase the alcohol?
I think I went on Thomasville Road at ABC Liquor.
Okay. Is there a reason you went to that particular store?
No, I don't know many liquor stores. That was the first one that popped up.
All right. And you made that purchase according to the receipt that was in your vehicle at 12:49. Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds right.
Okay. I want to talk about where you went when you left your residence on the day of the murder. You tried to turn on to Trescott, and then you ended up where?
I went, I was supposed to go to a party that night, a stock the bar party, so I went to a liquor store to pick up what they had asked for as the present for their party. So I went to the liquor store, I picked up the alcohol, I stopped, I think I got gas, and then I went to lunch to meet my friends.
And the liquor store purchase appears to have occurred at 12:49 based on the receipt. Do you have any reason to dispute that
No,
timing?
that sounds right.
The way she avoids saying what type of bourbon it is, only for Dan Rashbaum to follow up and call it out by name.
I was supposed to go to a party that night, a stock the bar party, so I went to a liquor store to pick up what they had asked for as the present for their party.
I don't know if it's bourbon or whiskey. I don't even know if they're the same things, but Bullet whiskey.
It was bourbon.
Okay.
I swear, I really think he was secretly working for the state. The amount of things that he has clarified that has no benefit to Charlie whatsoever, or even better, seems like something that Georgia should have asked, is hilarious. So, if it's become abundantly clear that Wendi should be behind bars right now, and you're still wondering why she's free, I'll cover that in part 7.